All eyes were on her. The entire cabin had gone silent. First class wasn't used to this kind of drama, but what just happened shocked everyone, even the captain. It started with a simple request: a seat, a meal, a little respect. Yet the flight attendant's sharp words cut through the calm air like a knife. The way she looked at the woman was filled with disdain, cold and uncalled for. Passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, whispering behind cupped hands. No one could believe what they were hearing. But then, something changed. The woman reached into her purse and pulled out something that stopped everyone in their tracks. The flight attendant's confident smirk vanished instantly, replaced by stunned silence. This wasn't just any passenger, and what she revealed next would turn the entire flight upside down. Danielle was the kind of woman who didn't need to shout to be noticed. In her mid-30s, she carried herself with a quiet confidence and grace that came from years of hard work and determination. She was successful, a business executive who had worked her way up the ladder, earning respect from colleagues and clients alike. But today, she was just a woman looking for a little peace during her flight. She wore simple, classy clothes, a soft navy blouse, tailored black pants, and a delicate gold necklace. Nothing flashy, no designer labels on display, just elegance in its purest form. She didn't care about showing off. For Danielle, it was about comfort and dignity. Usually Danielle flew economy. It wasn't a choice made out of necessity, but rather practicality. She believed in being grounded, in not letting status define her. But this trip was different. The company had upgraded her to first class as a thank you for landing a major deal. At first, she hesitated to accept, unsure if she belonged in such a space, but she decided to embrace it, reminding herself that she earned every bit of it. Danielle was no stranger to subtle looks, those quick, lingering glances that spoke louder than words. Sometimes, she caught the surprise or disbelief behind them, but she never let it bother her. She had learned early on that people's opinions were not her burden to carry. She focused on her work, on being the best version of herself. Today, though, those looks would turn into something far worse. And she would face it head on. Danielle stepped onto the plane early, thanks to her first-class ticket. The soft hum of the engines mixed with quiet chatter as other passengers settled in. She moved calmly down the aisle, her suitcase rolling behind her. She had flown many times before, but this time something felt different. At the entrance to first class, the flight attendant greeted her. Linda's smile looked practiced, but her eyes told a different story. There was suspicion there, a sharpness that didn't quite fit the polite greeting. As Danielle handed over her boarding pass, Linda studied it carefully. Then, just to be sure, she looked at it again, slow and deliberate. The forced smile didn't reach her eyes. "You might be in the wrong section," Linda said, her voice light but with an edge that didn't go unnoticed. It wasn't a question, it was a challenge. Danielle paused for a moment but kept her voice steady and polite. "I think I know where I belong," she replied softly, with a calm firmness that left no room for argument. Linda glanced away quickly, then nodded and stepped aside, motioning for Danielle to proceed. The other passengers in first class watched the brief exchange with quiet curiosity, but no one said a word. Danielle settled into her seat by the window, trying to shake off the unease that had started creeping in. She told herself it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe Linda was having a bad day, but deep down Danielle knew this was only the beginning of a much harder test. As the plane prepared for takeoff, the flight attendants began their usual routines, offering drinks, handing out menus, and making sure everyone felt comfortable. But Linda's attitude toward Danielle didn't improve. If anything, it grew colder. When Linda came down the aisle with the pre-flight drink cart, she stopped at every seat except Danielle's. She handed out glasses of champagne and orange juice to the others, with a practiced smile, but simply walked past Danielle without a word. Danielle caught the slight shrug from Linda's shoulders, like she was deliberately ignoring her. A few moments later, Linda handed menus to the other first-class passengers, but didn't offer one to Danielle. Her eyes briefly met Danielle's, and there was a flicker of something: dismissal, maybe even disdain. The message was clear: Danielle wasn't worthy of the same treatment. Another passenger nearby noticed the slight. She raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. The tension in the cabin grew thicker. Danielle felt the weight of the silent judgment, but she stayed composed. She didn't want to make a scene. She told herself that flying meant patience, and sometimes that meant swallowing pride. Still, inside, a quiet fire was growing. This wasn't how she expected to be treated. Not after everything she had achieved. But for now, Danielle kept her calm. She smiled politely when a flight attendant passed by and took a deep breath. She reminded herself, this flight wasn't about confrontation, it was about getting through, in one piece. Midway through the flight, the meal service began. Danielle waited patiently as Linda made her way through the cabin, handing out trays with practiced efficiency. When Linda reached her seat, she placed a plate in front of Danielle without even looking up. Danielle glanced down and immediately noticed it wasn't what she had ordered. She raised her voice just enough to be heard, but kept it soft and polite. "Excuse me, I believe this isn't the meal I requested." Linda sighed loudly, the kind of exasperated sound that said she didn't want to be bothered. She glanced at the tray, and then back at Danielle, a sarcastic smile creeping across her face. "Maybe you should have stayed in economy if you wanted choices." The cabin fell completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Passengers around them exchanged shocked glances. Some looked away, pretending not to hear, while others leaned in slightly, clearly listening. Danielle blinked, stunned for a moment. Then, steadying herself, she said quietly but firmly, "Excuse me." Linda's expression twisted into something sharper, colder. "Ma'am," she said, voice low but cutting, "I don't know how you even got up here." A couple sitting across the aisle exchanged uneasy looks. The man leaned closer to his wife, and whispered, "She didn't just say that." His voice was barely audible, but the shock was clear. The air in the cabin grew heavy, thick with disbelief. Danielle could feel every gaze in first class fixed on her, some curious, some skeptical, others quietly supportive. But she refused to give in to the tension. Instead, she took a slow, steady breath, and spoke softly, her voice calm but unwavering. "I'm here because I earned it. And I deserve the same respect as anyone else on this plane." Linda's lips pressed into a tight, thin line. She didn't respond. Without another word, she turned sharply and walked away, leaving behind a trail of silent unease. Danielle's heart hammered in her chest, but she refused to let the harsh words rattle her. She knew this was about more than just a wrong meal or a rude remark. It was about something deeper, about standing up for dignity and respect, even when it felt impossible. When Linda came back, her face was colder, harder than before. She leaned in just a little, lowering her voice but speaking loud enough for Danielle to hear. "I'm going to have to speak to the captain about your attitude." The words landed like a blow. Danielle felt a sharp tightening in her chest, and for a brief moment, the calm she worked so hard to hold on to threatened to slip away. But she forced herself to breathe slowly, steadying the storm inside her, refusing to let fear or anger take control. Without a word, she reached slowly into her purse. The cabin seemed to hold its breath, as she pulled out a small card, the kind you don't expect to see in the hands of a passenger. It wasn't a regular ID badge, it was official, embossed with the airline's logo, and the words Vice Chair, Executive Board. Linda's eyes snapped wide open in pure shock. That confident smirk she'd worn just moments before vanished completely, leaving only stunned silence hanging heavy in the air. Danielle looked up slowly, her voice soft but steady, filled with quiet strength. "You should probably do that. I'd love to have a word with him myself." The color drained right out of Linda's face. For the very first time, she looked unsure, even a little afraid. The whole atmosphere in the cabin shifted. The passengers who had been watching quietly now began whispering among themselves, surprised by how quickly the power had flipped. Danielle held her gaze firm. There was no anger, no yelling, just calm, quiet authority. She'd faced this kind of disrespect before, sure, but now she wasn't just any passenger. She was someone who could change what happened next. Linda swallowed hard, her voice stuck in her throat. She took a hesitant step back, unable to find the words to fight back. The rude flight attendant, who had been so dismissive just moments ago, was suddenly frozen, caught completely off guard by the woman she had clearly underestimated. The cabin felt electric, like something inside had cracked wide open. Danielle's quiet strength had shattered the walls of prejudice that had tried to hold her down, and no one could look away. Linda's face turned ghostly pale, the color leaving so fast it was like watching a shadow slowly disappear. She stumbled backward, her usual confident mask completely broken. "Oh, I didn't realize who you were. I'm so sorry," she stammered, voice trembling. Danielle held her gaze steady, her voice calm but firm as she said, "You didn't have to know who I was to treat me with basic respect." There was no anger in her tone, just quiet, undeniable truth. The cabin stayed heavy with tension, but something had shifted. The other passengers were watching closely now, sensing that this moment was bigger than just an argument. Then, suddenly, the captain appeared in the aisle. His face was serious, and his eyes held a weight of responsibility. He walked up to Danielle and spoke with genuine concern. "Ma'am, on behalf of the airline, I want to sincerely apologize for the treatment you've received. This is unacceptable, and we will be addressing it immediately." The cabin seemed to breathe a little easier. Passengers exchanged glances, some nodding quietly in agreement. One man near the back even clapped softly, breaking the silence. A few others whispered words of support, their eyes now openly fixed on Linda. Behind Danielle, a woman's voice rose just enough for those nearby to hear. "About time someone stood up to that attitude," she said softly, but clearly. Relief washed over Danielle, but she didn't let herself relax too much. This wasn't about winning or losing, it was about respect and dignity, basic things every person deserved, no matter who they were. Linda's apologies felt empty to many in the cabin. The damage had already been done. The story was no longer just Danielle's, it was now part of the flight's atmosphere. In hushed whispers and shocked glances, the captain assured everyone that he would follow up, and that this kind of behavior would not be tolerated again. Danielle settled back into her seat, quietly proud, but still processing the weight of what had just happened. She knew this wasn't just about her, it was about every person who had ever been made to feel less because of their skin color, their background, or where they came from. And today, she had made sure that message was heard loud and clear, by everyone on that plane. Danielle never raised her voice, she didn't yell or lash out, even though inside, her feelings were a storm. Instead, she stayed calm and collected, her strength quietly shining through like a steady light in a dark room. She didn't let anger take control, instead, she focused, taking careful notes, paying close attention to every detail, every word that was said, because she knew these moments mattered. After the plane finally touched down, Danielle asked for a private meeting with the airline's human resources team. She spoke clearly and calmly, explaining everything that had happened, from Linda's cold treatment to the harsh words. But she didn't just talk about herself, she made it clear that Linda's behavior was not an isolated problem. It was a sign of something deeper, something that needed to change. The airline acted quickly. Linda was suspended right away, pending a full investigation. Before she left the meeting, Danielle looked the HR manager directly in the eye, her voice was steady but filled with meaning. "This isn't just about me," she said. "It's about everyone who never got to speak up. Everyone who's been treated unfairly, but stayed silent." Her words carried real weight, they reminded the airline and everyone listening, that respect is not a favor or a reward, it's a basic human right. Danielle's quiet courage sparked a change. She showed that standing up doesn't always mean shouting or fighting back loudly. Sometimes it means standing firm with dignity, making sure the truth is heard without losing yourself. Respect shouldn't be something you have to earn because of your job title or your seat on the plane. It's something every person deserves, no matter their skin color, their name, or where they're sitting. Danielle's story reminds us all that quiet dignity can be more powerful than anger or shouting. Sometimes the strongest voice is the one that stays calm and refuses to back down, no matter what. Her story spread like wildfire the very next day. Many passengers reached out, sharing their own experiences of being overlooked or judged. Danielle's courage gave them hope, and a reminder that they weren't alone. She continues to fly, not to prove a point, but simply to live her life, fully and without apology, because respect isn't a privilege. It's a right. And Danielle's story reminds us all to stand tall, even when the world tries to bring us down. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And remember, kindness is free, but it means everything.